Hi. Okay, so this is take two actually, because my phone was too full for me to record it before. But anyway, I digress. So today, what we're doing is "Be the Light," and it's found in Matthew 5:16 is the actual line that we're going to highlight. So you should have gotten the JPEG, and you should be able to do the work. But I do have a video of me actually creating the art piece, and you can mimic mine, or you can do it your own way. But the reason I wanted to go live and talk to, or to record this, is to give a lesson behind this scripture. And some of the things that we need to take into account when we do this is that, okay, so this is in Matthew. Matthew is a great book. So if you haven't gotten accustomed to reading any of the books of the Bible, Matthew's really good because Jesus shows up in it and he talks quite a bit. And there's a lot of information there. We can often quote Paul a lot of times, but Jesus actually makes some very, very beautiful statements. And so if you wanted to find a lot of Jesus's actual verbiage, Matthew's a good book to read. In this particular situation, what I like most about Matthew is that what I call him the just do it disciple, because when Jesus went to him, he was busy. He had a job and he was at his work and he was at a counter doing tax collecting. So he was a tax collector, and Jesus walks up to him and says, "Follow me." And he's like, "Okay," and just gets up and goes and follows him, which is so weird and profound when you think about it, because how many times has Jesus called us to do it and we've just been hesitant and just thought, I don't know, like, oh, this doesn't, and you're gonna have to give me another sign about this. Like, I need multiple encouraging words in order to do something. And so that's why I think Matthew, hey guys, I'm on a video, so keep it down, please. Sorry, I couldn't focus. But that's why I call him the Nike disciple, because he's just like, he just does it. And there are the other disciples too that drop their nets and then go to follow him while he's fishing. But for me in particular, I feel like it was harder for him. Fishing was their job and they were, out casting. But what if they had caught their cast for the day and they had met their quota? Leaving wouldn't have been that big of a deal. But for me, I feel like for Matthew to just drop what he's doing in the middle of tax collecting to get up and go and follow him, I thought was really cool. So one of the things that we're going to talk about is in Matthew, the reason he was writing it was to inform the Jews that Jesus was the Messiah. So a lot of his statements are to prove that the the Old Testament is confirming that this is in fact the Messiah. And so there's a lot of statements in the book of Matthew for that reason. And the reason that he felt compelled to do that, or the reason he wanted to do that for the Jews, was because in their time, if someone was from another area, like let's say that someone was from Rome and they were trying to convince someone that this person was the Messiah and this Messiah was from a different location than Israel, then the Jewish people might have a hard time wanting to accept that. And so you can see that throughout the Bible, where the Jewish people have a hard time working up to accepting Jesus as the Messiah. And it's mostly because of being burned in the past before. So they've been burned by the Romans, and they've been burned by Egypt, and they were enslaved by those people. So a lot of it is just trying to convince them that, yes, this is in fact the Messiah, and we should be listening to him, and we should be following and taking heed in his urgings. So if you look at Matthew, we're going to talk about, actually, no, let me step back. Just one more thing. So this morning at church, our pastor was actually talking about discipleship and what it means to be a disciple. And he was mentioning that there are disciples that belong to CrossFit. There are CrossFit disciples. They're always recruiting other people. They're always talking about CrossFit. They have their own set of rules and restrictions and guidelines and things that promote their CrossFit lifestyle. And they do follow it, like very They follow the rules of CrossFit. And so he was saying that those people were disciples of CrossFit. And I like that analogy a whole lot, but I think what he was missing in the conversation that he said, he didn't mention the fact that it takes discipline. And what the disciples are here to show us are the disciplines that it takes in order to become a full-fledged Christian and to be closest to Christ-like. And so Matthew, I think that his discipline, or one of the things that he's so good at, is I love the just do it idea, like just having having an attitude to just like get up and go and just follow Christ just because he says so. So if you come across information where you feel like, oh, I think Christ is asking me to fast, for instance, which is also mentioned in Matthew, like if you see things where you're like, oh, I'm hearing a lot about fasting, maybe I should be fasting, and you come across it, just do it. Just do it. See where it takes you. If it leads you to light, then it's the right path, and if it leads you to darkness, it's not the right path, right? So we learn that by his example of just do it, just get up and go and see where it leads you. That curiosity, I think, is just a cool thing for him to assign curiosity to a discipline. Also might be a way to encourage you to develop a walk with Christ. So, all right, so let's go to our actual art piece is light and some light bulbs and to be the light. But the scripture itself, it starts with salt and light, and it says, you are the salt of the earth, but if the salt loses its saltiness, how can it be made salty again? It is no longer good for anything except to be thrown out and trampled underfoot. You are the light of the world. A town built on a hill cannot be hidden. Neither do people light a lamp and put it under a bowl. Instead, they put it on its stand and give it light to everyone in the house. In the same way, let your light shine before others, that they may see your good deeds and glorify your Father in heaven. So this is about going out and discipling and showing good deeds onto others. And I, it's hard for us right now. We're in Corona. We're stuck inside a lot, but we have to go the extra mile in order to do a good deed for someone. Like, this is not boastful. I don't mean this to be boastful, but like today I brought strawberry plants out. I had an abundance of that, so I gathered them up and I took them to a gardening trade, and that was it. It was just one little thing. Just a little bitty thing that you can do, any little bitty thing. Last week I took some clippings from my garden, some basil, and brought it to 2 friends. So I'm sure that really like brightened their day, like, and again, it's not to be boastful. It's not to say like, oh, look at what I've done. I'm saying that we have to take an extra step during Corona in order to bring our light out into the world. Because our light now is kind of stuck in the house. But you can bring your light to your kids, obviously, and to the people inside of the house. So that's also a way that you can shine brightly. And let's talk about light. So back then in Jesus's day, the lamps that they used were run with oil. And oil was kind of expensive. It was because it was basically your electricity, is how you saw at night. So oil was pretty pricey. It was well sought after, right? But oil came to be a symbol of light. And so the light, though, what it signifies is understanding. So another word for that is enlightenment. And literally it has the word light inside of it, enlightenment. So when we think about our light, when we want our light to shine, what is it we want to shine out? We want to shine out our enlightenment. And then for me, in the way that I shared my plants, my enlightenment aha thing that I had happen to me was that I realized that God provides to us abundantly, but we also have to foster that in a soil within us and grow our roots deep into that trust and understanding. And so for me, I started my garden a few years ago, I've been learning a lot from it. And so what I've started to do was to teach other people how to have gardens and to produce food for their families also. Because here's the weird part. Because through my garden, I realize things about my nature, about my life, about my understanding and my enlightenment. So as a disciple, I am showing people how to use a garden because that's how I was raised. I was taught how to grow a garden. But what I didn't realize is that the garden just teaches you so much about your just general nature. Like, let's say you have a ton of weeds growing in your garden. Okay, well, what happened? You start to realize, hey, I neglected this. I put this aside. I put other things ahead of, and the year I had cancer, my garden was full of weeds. Let's be honest, I had to put other things ahead of my garden. And then, so that made me also realize, like, that's a balance. That's part of this balance that life is, that we really have to, like, be conscious and aware of the balance that's shifting in our lives. Like, what things are we letting weeds grow into? Is it our friendships? Is it our values? Is it our enlightenment quest? Is it our seeking scripture? Is it our reading our Bible? What are we letting weeds grow into in our lives where we've put focus on something else? And obviously, in the case of me having cancer, I did have to put focus on my family and my well-being for a while, and my garden had to go away. But my garden is just a symbol. It's just a symbol of something that became greater for me. And I know that if you planted a garden, the same thing would happen to you, because these little plants that we take care of, it's like that's what God does with us. Like, he's taking care of us. And so when you put yourself in the role of the caregiver, you start to realize that there are things that can creep in that you didn't even see coming. There are things that or you'll have a beautiful bloom out of nowhere, and you're like, yes, I'm doing something right. And those are the things that keep you encouraged to go forward. And it's exactly like in your scripture reading, you'll have a little bloom of enlightenment, and you'll say, yeah, like that's like strokes the curiosity inside of me that gets me more wanting to be inside of the word. And what does that mean, you know? So anyway, that's what I'm studying right now on a personal level. I am studying the disciples and what is it that each represents to me in my life right now as to be a disciple. And I think that they could be, the more I'm reading about it, the more I'm realizing they could be symbols of stages in our awakening. There's one that's love, just pure love, John, the one that Jesus himself had loved and was beloved to Jesus. He is a symbol of love, just love. And how funny that Jesus, not funny, but I mean, yeah, hello, Jesus would put that above the other disciples to some degree. I'm also realizing that I'm a bit of a Peter. Like, I just say whatever the heck I want to say sometimes. And even Jesus had to tell Peter, devil, get behind me, because Peter just says whatever. He's the first to speak most times. So if you're reading the Bible and you realize you're a bit of a Peter, you're the first to speak when something isn't jiving or you don't see right. And sometimes you can beat yourself up about it, but it's no big deal. Like, you're a Peter. That's okay. Like, you can go ahead and just say what it is you need to say, and God will correct you and lead you down the right way, even if you say things that aren't exactly 100%. So it doesn't, anyway, I'm getting off topic. But so learning about being a disciple, you may see yourself in some of these other disciples, and you may not see yourself not represented in some of the disciples, and you might ask yourself, well, how come I'm not as loving as John? Or how come I'm not as willing to drop everything like Matthew? And how come I'm not like a Bartholomew who is more contemplative? Or how come, just ask yourself these things, ask God these things, like, Lord, are you asking to be more contemplative? Are you asking me to be more loving? And these are things that we all have to work on, and this is all part of our discipline. And these are the disciplines that we have to go to every day. Every day we wake up a new person, right? So every day We have to go back to our disciplines and realize that these are things that we have to pick up. These are the crosses that we bear, these struggles that we have to carry with us throughout our day to overcome. And eventually, some things will get a little bit easier, like my tendency to be a Peter. It comes and goes. Like, I'm not always so quick to mouth off, because I've learned that, like, to be a James means that you have to watch what you say. So James is really good